Welcome back to Spoken D. This is part 2, talking about video games. And I think last time we said we would start talking about emotional processing. And can video games be useful for that?
Yeah, I think I made the comment about our kids hitting each other less in real life because they get to punch or shoot each other in the virtual life, and that gets their negative emotion towards that person out without actually physically expressing it.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to some of the research you were citing earlier, is that they are finding that if you can use the video games in the right manner, that they can all be a way to almost subconsciously get out some of your frustrations, guilt. We were talking just in between episodes of taping how, you can get out some competitive fluids on the video game field. So it can be very useful. So the idea is, can you sort of process through it within the video game and not take what's happening in the video game into the outside world, right?
Yeah.
And continue it.
Well, yeah, because we know that you can process without doing the physical, what you're thinking, right? Because it used to be, well, if you're mad at your brother, go smack your pillow, right? And if you hit your pillow hard enough times, then you cool off, right?
And that's why they'd have the punching bag sometimes in the house. Just go hit that sucker.
Or a lot of recommendation is, if you have a lot of frustration, join a gym or something, go and lift weight, physically exert yourself to get that out. So now we're just taking that track to, well, do you really have to do the physical exertion, or is it just a mental, you're stuck mentally on this feeling or emotion or desire to do something that if you can release, that you don't have to tie the physical response to it.
Well, the interesting part of that to me is that, the physical exertion is a way to disengage your brain from what you're thinking about that's making you angry or frustrated, right? So you're able to transfer that into a physical action and disengage your brain and get it onto something else. Mm-hmm. Versus, just think about this. With the video game, you're able to keep your brain engaged in the emotion and work your way through it. Now, we also hear about adults and kids picking up their video game and throwing it through the screen.
Yeah, that's I'm no longer getting out through the video game is now the frustration, so I want to hit the video game.
So they are not able to use that to process, at least at this stage, in their development of using video games. That does not work for them. So, I'm sure what will be going on in research as time goes on is there a biomarker that allows you to identify who does well with processing that through a video game versus not. Now out in the field of mental health, we have video games coming on the market to treat ADHD, to see if they can help with attention, concentration, and those things. So not necessarily the aggression yet, but can you move up through that neurocognitive scale and be able to do better in those things. So that is coming down because they're seeing benefits from some of these things. So that is very interesting. But, if a kid or adult is able to use those to sort of calm themselves down sometimes and then come out and re-engage in a calmer manner, that would be a very positive benefit.
Yeah, so, what's striking me is I think there's potentially two ways video games are getting used, right? Well, outside of just fun and recreate, but in this conversation. One is I'm mad at something or someone, and I'm going to the video game to get it out, which is potentially a healthy way to get that emotion out of your brain so then you can re-engage and not have it be an issue.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
But then I think the person who takes the controller and puts it through the TV is, now my video game is my source of stress. And continuing playing is not relieving my stress, it is compounding my stress.
Yeah.
So now I may be going to relieve the stress in my life is adding on to the stress in my life. And I finally just have to hit the video game.
Well, let's talk about this in real life because different type of video game, but you do some of these chess games, right?
Yep, I've been into chess games.
And you get these levels that go by like certain points, but to get from you were telling me to get from a certain level up to the next was like it was leaps and bounds. It was very difficult to get to that next level. I just remember talking to you. This is very frustrating. I'm not able. It's like 10 points. I need to get 10 points higher, and I gain a couple and I lose a couple. But you kept going after that, correct?
Yeah, I think chess is something that we could dive into maybe, but chess is one that I think me and one of my brothers tried to get into it a lot for like a month or two. And for a month or two, when you first get in, you're making progression. Then you kind of hit your natural limit, right? So I think I went up like 200 points. So I think I maxed out my rating at 1,200 for anyone who cares about chess on the chess.com website. And then I didn't touch it for like 2 or 3 months. And now I'm like back down to 900. Like I just instantly lost every game I jumped in on. So that retention of
not like riding a bike.
Not like I remember how the pieces move, but the strategies and pattern recognition and all that you're trying to. Well, I also play very fast chess, right? I like
3-minute games. Yeah.
Not to sit at the board and analyze every move. I'm like, can I process faster than my opponent? So a lot of it's recall of patterns and recall of positions and. I know what you're trying to do, so I'm going to... Well, if you don't remember all that, then good luck in 3 minutes trying to beat this person who knows what they're doing. But yeah, that was a game that was very much... Sometimes I'd play and I'd be feeling good, and all of a sudden, that's the source of my stress right now because I'm just losing every game. And then you go, I can't put down till I win one because I can't end on... then the competitive side is, you can't end on a negative. So then you're just in this rabbit hole of never stepping away from it. And finally, when you're being done, just being frustrated at the whole experience.
Yeah, so that sort of parlays what we see in athletics. Kids are getting started in piano, guitar, people buying treadmills. It's very common for people to get started, make some initial progress, and then all of a sudden they stop. And when they go back, they sort of have this feeling, I should be back able to do what I was doing, right? And that's not the case. You have to sort of start down a few notches and go up. And a lot of people give up at that point in time. Mm-hmm. That's why it takes many times, the average is 3 or 4 times before somebody can stop smoking. Mm-hmm. We know these other things. People start and stop. So can video games sort of get you to the point that you will have more staying power with something? You'll deal with more frustration. Even if you go away and you'll stick with something more.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends on your purpose of playing, right? Because, like for me, video games transitioned from really kicked in after I quit playing sports competitively. Like most kids do after high school, you're not good enough to continue, but you still have this competitive fire in you, and you need an outlet for it, or you hit your brother or something, right? So, but what I like about video games probably is I get really frustrated reaching a point and then not having consistent wins. Unless you're really going into something to be competitive and your drive is really just I want to be the best I can at this, then you're going to hit that plateau, and then incremental increases are going to be slow, right? Well, with video games, you can just real easily jump to that next one,
right,
and get back into that. I'm making improvements very quickly, and I'm getting that positive feedback rapidly. So every couple months, you can just hop to a new one, and not really get stuck in that. I've hit my natural plateau, and now it's going to be work versus just fun.
Okay, so you sort of brought something else up in my brain because maybe the other part that we were going to talk about down the road will be the third part. But so moving from like competitive sports, playing through high school, junior high school, and I don't care what it is, debate teams, esports, most people don't make it to the next level, right? And even people who play in college, now almost none of them
moves on to the next one is.
But you still have a lot of times that passion drive.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's say you get married or you get in a relationship. So what I hear a lot is probably on the opposite side of this in the treatment room is, oh my gosh, all that person does is sit in a room all day and play video games. They don't spend any time with me. They're obsessed with the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you bring it up, I wonder if on the other side of the coin, say, you're married now and you have a kid and you still have this drive, but you don't really have a physical outlet with the buddies to go do things or with the gals. So does that provide you some stress relief, actually? You're able to use that, and it makes you better and happier in your relationship.
Yeah, I think it's video games is just the way of the outlet of what's you're trying to accomplish, right? So when you say, you hear in the room, video games are the problem, because I think everybody's heard at some point video games are the
Right.
problem. I go, video game isn't the problem. The problem is they're not spending enough time with you. But if they replace video game with going to the gym, you'd have an issue with them going to the gym, because it's
Well, if they're spending
the time
6 hours there, right?
So it's just the video game isn't causing the problem. The problem is they want to do something that is a significant amount of time away from what the other person wants them to be doing. And that, to me, that's what causes the friction in those situations, is an unmet need that then is being put on what you perceive the person to be doing instead of what they. But I think video games is a heightened one for a lot of people because it's viewed as, oh, it's potentially lazy. It's non-productive. At least going to the gym, they're working on their health or something. If they're out with friends, they're at least socializing. Well, if you're socializing on the game, it's viewed differently. I think, and you tend to be around the person that feels like you're avoiding them, right? Oh, they're in the house. They're around the kids. They could just put it down and walk into the next room and everything's fine.
But their back is to us. They're focused on their screen. They got their headphones on, the silencers. And if anybody bugs them while they're playing their game, whoa,
Yeah.
right?
So I have to watch them do the thing that's annoying me versus, well, they left and I'm annoyed, but at least I don't have to watch them counting reps or drinking beers or whatever else they'd be doing. Instead of the video game, it's removed from the house.
Yeah. But I do think it's very fascinating, actually, that it could be on the opposite side a very positive thing. I have found a way to relieve all these urges. True, I might need to get physical exercise, too, in addition to that. But I'm keeping my mind active. I'm able to satisfy my sort of competitive things. I'm not going out to the bars or stuff, taken away from... And I'm still here for my family time. It's just, it might need to be a little structured so it's, an agreed about amount of time, right?
Yeah.
And it might be that one of the partners just abhors video games, so maybe go off to a different room to do them in that case. But it's also a way, if you can become better at them, a way for you to engage with your kids. Because we know that a lot of parents, hey, here's the new iPhone, figure it out for me. I don't know what to do with it. Right?
Well, yeah, I think now the reality is all kids are at some point going to be exposed to video games. And more than likely, they're going to go through a video game phase. Right? I don't know of any kids who get exposed and have access and freely choose for their whole childhood not to engage in them. At some point, they're going to decide, yeah, it's worth my time. No, it's not. I don't really enjoy it. But the newness, right, when it's new... I think all kids kind of dive into the things that are new. And it's also very different than a lot of... And I mean, VR is going to change that too, which that's a whole other topic maybe.
Yeah, but that's
VR.
But that's an interesting thing. These video games are ubiquitous, right? Mm-hmm. They're in the cloud. They're in the store. So
They're on your phone.
Yeah. So if you try to keep your children completely away from them, are you actually fueling a potential addiction to video games?
Well, from what I've heard about addiction, you can, of course, jump in, is aside from the substances that are addictive, right? So the habitual things is, I think I saw research once that said most people who develop habitual addictions develop them between like 14 and 18. Mm-hmm. Alcohol, gambling, those type of things, they tend to find them when they're in their teens overly use them in their teens, and then it's wired into their brain as a dopamine dump or whatever's going on up there that keeps them chasing that thing. So
I would expand that age range a little bit because you might not be exposed during those ages.
Right, but so the question then is, is it partially exposure, but then two, and I don't think there's any way to prove these, but are the kids who really go into them partially either the ones who given too much access or really restrictive access? So now they're the boundary pushing, right? Oh, well, I'm not supposed to do it, so now the more I can get into it, the more I'm defiant. Or
yeah, or did you titrate the video game into the brain system, or between at this high-risk period to develop these things, did you create potential for a dump? So, oh my gosh, it's new, I got it, and all of a sudden my brain just wants more and more and more of it. At this point, I cannot turn it off.
Yeah, because what would be interesting in video games, I don't know if there's anything historical you could compare it to, is really quickly we've had 3 generations almost, right? There's the video games came when you're already an adult, and that generation kind of just left them, not everyone, but the majority of that population left them behind, right? Then there was the video games came at some point in our school age, right? So for me, they were kind of catching on in high school, but really video games probably didn't really become prevalent because even in my age group, they were so, the nerds play video games. It's not for everyone. It's still a segmented group, right? Where I think the generation right behind mine was the high school was around the time that everyone was doing it, and now my daughter's going to be essentially day one. It's integrated into their life. So are they going to treat video games differently than the ones who were exposed and it was really heavy at their 14-year-old to 16 or that age group where it was, oh, let's just dive in headfirst full time because we've never had this, or it wasn't a big part of growing up, so it's now the new thing.
Yeah, most likely it will become like everything else. Be like sports, right? Some people get involved, some don't. Some will get involved to some degree and won't. Then if you throw NIL money at it, more people. But I would compare it to TV. In my generation, and generations before and since, when there were 3 channels on the TV, I watched TV, and there was nothing really else going on Sunday, so I watched sports. But interesting, as more has become available, I mean, man, there's so many channels, and there's all these streaming services. I've become less and less interested. There's too many options. So it's sort of, there's too many choices for my brain to deal with. So I just hardly watch any. In fact, we have a TV down in the basement. I don't think we've turned it on in like a year and a half or so. So that has been replaced by things like, YouTube or, Netflix or that. But even that, there are too many options. And you just don't know. This is going to be for sure be the plot. And it's not going to be on for years, right?
Yeah. Because for like me, right, TV was there my whole life.
Right.
So I don't have this big desire to watch. For me, TV's on in the background. Like, I like to have it on in the background, but I do not like to just sit down and watch it. And I don't know a lot of people my age group who just like certain sports, certain things they like, but to sit down all day and watch it as a generation doesn't seem to be a big thing.
So that is a separate topic for a separate time, noise in the background.
So we have to remember games, we like to sit down and spend large amounts of time. But that was kind of novel. It wasn't there for our whole childhood. So I wonder if the new generation, where it's part of their whole childhood, is not going to be this. It's going to go the way of TV.
Right.
Yeah.
Noise in the background. I like that. So this is going to wrap up this segment. We actually are going to have at least one more segment. I don't know how many we will, but one thing we wanted to touch on are more of the individual video games versus the team video games, and why might one be drawn to one or the other. And what significance those might have. We just started talking a little bit, and we found it to probably be an interesting topic. So thank you for joining us on Spoken D, and be sure to like or subscribe and leave us comments. Thank you very much.